your big Hollywood sunglasses and light the torch, because it's cellar time. Welcome to the Crack Cellar, as the prophecy was once recast with plucky teenagers. I'm Two-Spirit Penguin Daniel.
And I'm the fattest nickel ever.
Broadcaster, are you ready for lament configuration?
Tell us if we can exchange one pleasure for another.
So, Hellraiser 9 is what this is, even though...
Is it really?
Yeah, it's essentially a reboot, but it's also a sequel to Hellraiser 2. So it's very murky waters with this movie. But that being said, I'll start this off with something from the man Doug Bradley himself, the original Pinhead. He said that he was blown away by the female Pinhead in this movie, and he specifically called on the keyhole locket that's on her throat, which I also thought was pretty cool, and the shimmer on the pins on her head, that kind of captivated me. I feel like when I saw that was when I realized this movie was different than the other 6 schlocky sequels that I've been forced to watch over the years.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a Hellraiser connoisseur. I've seen 1, 2, and then this one. And
you've seen Hell on Earth. You had, dude. I know you've.
I've seen it, but it's like it's so fuzzy in my head. I barely. But anyway,
it's like Bloodline too.
It's like Jason X. I did see a little bit of Bloodline, but I hated it. Remember, we talked about it. I immediately called it schlocky, and I was like, "This is just gore porn," and I hate gore porn. I fucking hate the shit.
I agree. It was like I feel like Bloodline was right around when Event Horizon came out, and then also Jason in Space. Like there was this weird
Jason
trend.
X.
Yeah, there's this weird trend of putting like fucking supernatural horror movie villains into space.
Horror movies took a hard L in that era. Hard L. but yeah, what was I saying? I'm not a connoisseur of any kind for Hellraiser, but immediately when I saw the trailer for this, when we first were saying we were going to review it, I could tell the set, like the camera work and the sets and the Cenobites shown were leagues apart from the schlock from the last 5 years at least.
Yeah. So the last Hellraiser movie that came before this new one was okay. It wasn't special, but it wasn't bad either. Like it was a fun watch. Like when I finished, I was like, yeah, that was I don't regret it. The 3 before that though were really bad, and there was one that was based on social media, and it was the cringiest shit. I don't remember if it was 7 or 6, but it was one of those, and it was so effing cringe. So we've come a long way with this new Hellraiser movie, because this is much more in line with the original trilogy, much more.
Yeah, it's always refreshing. I mean, again, I'm not I don't know a whole fuck ton about this series IP, but it's good to see a return to form. I don't even know what the form really is.
Yeah,
from my childhood when I watched 1 and 2,
I'll tell you what the form is.
This is good. This is not just your typical torture porn, gore porn, cheap CGI. It actually had a pretty cool story, like Roland Voight somehow having some weird obsession with the Cenobites in the beginning, in his mansion with the riddle box shape. There's set pieces that really, even if you weren't, it almost seemed like a real reboot. Now that I'm saying this out loud, because you saw things that would intrigue you to actually want to know more about Hellraiser as a series. And I haven't felt that since I watched the original one, as a kid. Just seeing Roland Voight's ceiling with the puzzle box shape.
Yeah.
You're like, well, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in a way, this new Hellraiser movie is sort of an amalgamation of Hellraiser 1, 2, and 3 combined.
Yeah.
There's aspects of all of the original trilogy in this movie. And the description that you get for this movie is that it's a take on Clive Barker's 1987 horror classic where a young woman struggling with addiction comes into possession of the box, unaware of its purpose to summon the Cenobites. And if you think about it, that's essentially...
that's not Christie, but...
No, but it's like you can just feel in that short but, very poignant introduction that like it's really just saying, hey, this is just classic Hellraiser. We're doing classic. There's no weird, stupid stuff going on here. There's no gimmicks. This is just some Hellraiser action. It was directed by David Bruckner, who I wasn't too familiar with. He's done... The one thing that I've seen him do was a horror movie called The Ritual. And it was this movie... I told you about this, is from 2017. I remember telling you about it when I first watched it, like telling you to watch it because it had like some Bloodborne vibes to it. Like basically these like hikers out in Europe are like going on a boys trip hiking and they get lost in the woods and like some crazy cult shit happens. And essentially the monster in The Ritual is the cleric beast from Bloodborne. It's super tight. It was a really cool little horror movie. And he did that as well. But that's all I really know him from. So he's kind of a low-key dude. But more importantly, Clive Barker was a executive producer on this movie. So you can feel that influence too.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm just looking at this Ritual movie. This looks familiar. I feel like I started watching it maybe and then I never finished it.
Yeah, it's possible. It kind of starts a little slow, but yeah, once it starts getting into it, you're just like, oh shit! Like it has some really cool stuff towards the end. But
that's interesting. So he's had nothing to do with the Hellraiser series up until now.
No, he just I don't know how it happened, but he just kind of took over the reins. And I mean, based off of this movie, I think he should keep the reins for a while because. I mean, overall, I don't know about you, but I liked this movie a lot.
Oh yeah, it was good. It was definitely. I don't like horror that much nowadays. I'm more of a survival horror game guy. Not so much movies, but because I just I feel like I've said this 3 or 4 times already now, but I'm just not into that fucking torture gore porn. Like even in certain parts of the movie where people's flesh is getting ripped up, like. My body just tenses up on those moments because my brain can't separate, like the idea of that happening to me at the exact moment I'm watching it, and I'm just like, God damn it, I can't just keep doing this.
Yeah, and I'm exactly like you. I don't watch gore porn. I'm a huge horror movie person, but as soon as I get an inkling that this is gore porn, I tap out and I stop watching them. Like the greatest example for me was the Jigsaw. What was the movie with Jigsaw? Saw. That I remember when I watched the first Saw, I never watched another one because as soon as I started watching, I'm like, this is gore porn. And it's only going to get worse from here. The first
kind of
one,
my departure. Yeah.
The first one had an interesting story, an interesting premise, but I instinctually knew that any future sequels to it was just going to be straight up gore porn. And I'm pretty sure I was correct about that based on conversations I've had with other people that continued to watch the Saw movies. I'm not into that. I know you're not into that. That's why we've never really reviewed any gore porn on this podcast. All the scary movies we've reviewed are pretty much specifically in the line of just like fear-based, not gore-based. And that is what
Hellraiser there's definitely moments where, I would definitely consider it that, but it doesn't overuse it.
It's not the point,
especially,
gore
especially for a series where like the Cenobites, are the Cenobites, you'd think they'd have this excuse to go over the top. and I really liked their playful way with it because they allowed them to like actually like all like like the intrigue on the puzzle box in this movie was really cool.
Yes.
You know, seeing all the shapes, seeing, you know,
and that is something that is something straight from Clive Barker's influence, by the way.
Yeah,
there's a few
sure.
aspects of this movie that if you've read the original Hellbound Heart and you're kind of in the know with Clive Barker's version of Hellraiser, there's a few parts of this movie where you're like, that was Clive, and all of the configurations on the puzzle box, that was Clive, straight up. And yeah, it was good, and I want to talk more in depth about the exact configurations because I really liked the sort of the symbolism. I don't want to talk about it yet because we're not in spoilers, but there's specific symbolism in certain configurations that I thought was really cool and almost sort of biblical. But yeah, what do you think overall about like the CG in this movie? Because one problem
that's a good question
with these older Hellraisers, or not older, like these previous Hellraisers that are schlocky and B movies, like the 5s and the 6s and the 7s and even the 8s a little bit, although I think 8 kind of reined it in a little bit, but those ones kind of either used almost no CG or the CG they did use was god-awful, and this series wasn't really known for great CG. Being someone that hasn't watched a Hellraiser since the OG days, what was your interpretation of the CG usage in this movie?
I thought it was pretty good. It was pretty tasteful. I think the only thing that really stuck out to me is poor CGI were some of the chains. Like when the chains come out off screen or into frame, you know, out of nowhere. Some of those scenes looked pretty iffy. And then towards one of the ending scenes when someone's being, lifted up, let's just say, there's this continuous brick gray stone pattern thing trying to represent like a deep hole beneath him, and it didn't look high. It didn't look high budget. Let's just say that.
It's funny. I forgot about that, but now that you mention it, I remember thinking the same thing on that specific one with the well. Yeah.
So those couple scenes, but then there were you bring up them not having a lot of CG, but on the opposite side of the coin, the practical effects in this movie in particular were amazing. Yeah. The Cenobites practical effects were amazing. Some of the I don't know if it was animatronics or because one of those Cenobites, the biting Cenobite,
biter, he was awesome.
Like that couldn't have been a real human doing that. It just didn't look right. So I thought it was like a prosthetic mechanical mask of some kind that the actor was wearing. And as it's that was really good. Like I'd like to see that level of prosthetic mastery in like a Resident Evil movie. Yeah. Because I instantly saw that. I was like, that's like a Resident Evil creature, like a licker or something like that. And
well, it's interesting you say
going
that,
off on a tangent a little bit, but
because if you really, I feel like the Cenobites are kind of Resident Evil creatures a little bit.
Oh, for sure. Well, it's the other way around. It's the other way around, really.
It's totally. But the way that the Cenobites are described in literature makes them sound more like Resident Evil type stuff than it does the stuff you see in the movies. I feel like the original movie sort of set this precedent. And I mean, obviously I watched the movies way before I read Hellbound Heart. I feel like if I never saw the movies and I only read Hellbound Heart and other literature, I would have much more thought of them as like Resident Evil type creatures than what we know them as now through the movies. So it's interesting you said that. I kind of think you might be onto something there.
Yeah.
But so before we get into spoilers, I have a few questions for you. As you know, this new Hellraiser reboot is on Hulu. And Hulu is owned by Disney. So, my question to you, Broadcaster Nickels, Is the Hell Priest a Disney princess? Go.
I think she might be on the processing list.
Wait, into like a death camp? What do you mean processing list?
You said it, not me. I think Disney owns too much now. I think the list for Disney Princess application is pretty long.
Yeah.
It's not what it used to be, you know? You just can't get drawn or live in the Disney world. You got to be BIPOC and gender fluid, possibly.
Yeah.
Well, a couple other things.
Mm-hmm, and I don't know. There was this really shitty.
Hell Priest, you're fired.
There was this really shitty TV show back in the day called Sense8 that was made by the Wachowski people. And she played a tranny on that show. And the person who plays the Hell Priest in this movie. And I remember when I watched Sense8, and Sense8 came out before like wokeness took over. So like I wasn't as like repulsed by it. Like I wasn't like a tranny lover or anything, but it hadn't like annoyed me to the point where I just didn't want to hear anything about it anymore. So like I was open to it back then. I was much more like, okay, whatever. There's a tranny in the show. Okay, cool. I remember when I'd look at her and I'd be like, that's not a tranny. And it kind of broke the whole thing they were trying to do with the show, like to show like a transgender character. I remember looking at her like, that is a woman with a vagina. You know? Like there's no fucking way that is a transgendered man or like a man transgendering into a woman. There's no chance in hell. And at one point I found out that yes, that was definitely a female playing a tranny. And it just kind of cracks me up that I haven't heard of her or seen her since until she became the goddamn Hell Priest. And it just kind of feels apropos a little bit. Like she played the tranny in Sense8 and then she's reborn through the abyss through Leviathan and becomes the Hell Priest.
For a second I was like, where's he going with this?
There's just something about it that I enjoyed. Like, because I could just recognize her instantly. As soon as I saw the female Pinhead, I'm like, I know who that is. And I looked up who it is. I'm like, oh, it's her, And I'm just like sitting there like watching this movie like, yes, this works. Like it just, for some reason, it makes her work better as the female Hell Priest to me. I can't really explain it per se, but I guess this all leads to me saying I liked Jamie Clayton as the female Hell Priest. There was a lot of uproar when this first got announced that, we weren't going to have our boy back, the original Pinhead, and people were kind of pissed that a girl was going to take over. And it's like, not my Pinhead, Not
my hashtag, not my Pinhead.
But I really have to say she fucking nailed it. She was fucking awesome in this movie. I loved every scene with the Hell Priest. Every single one.
Yeah, and it's total. Let's be real here, guys. Makes a lot more sense that the Cenobites are all female.
It does, doesn't it?
Let's be real here, guys.
Yep. Let's keep it 100, as the kids would say.
Yeah. No brothers be doing that to each other. Okay.
So, you have any other like non-spoiler thoughts on the movie before we get to spoilers? Music, direction, lighting. Any of the generic stuff?
Music wasn't. I can't really knock too much on that. Like it stood out as bad. Like, but I did not notice the music.
It was subliminal.
Now that when you asked about it, I was like, shit, I don't even remember a goddamn track.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, definitely was very on the down low with the music. But one thing I'll point out is the direction of David Bruckner. Specifically, I think the direction was great overall, but there's a few scenes early on that I really liked. First, when the main character, So let's just say something happens and she starts spinning on a carousel. And you see the camera from her eyeballs. So like the camera is literally attached to her eyes and she's spinning.
Yeah.
And as she's spinning, it shows certain images come into frame and out of frame very subliminally. And then there's also a scene right next to that in a bathroom where some things go down. And I just thought that there was some real creative shots in this movie. Like, nothing really felt phoned into me. Maybe towards the very end there was a little bit, but like, especially in the beginning, I thought this was very like purposefully crafted. Like, there was no filler scenes, and every scene kind of had this purpose to it. And there's just a lot of great shots in this movie.
I think that's the best thing it had going for it, to be honest. The cinematography and like just the direction of them, all the scenes were really well. They were well over anyone's expectations for a budget movie like a Hellraiser reboot. You know, That's what really surprised me. Like, it kind of had, the movie had that old school 1980s feel to me almost, because it's a bunch of no-namers, you know,
which I love. I'm glad they went that way.
Yeah, but like there was no over exhausted purpose in the movie to try to flesh out these characters too much. Like, they weren't shallow. Well, some of them were a little shallow to the point where you wouldn't care about them, but that's okay. Like, the movie just had just enough depth to these no-namers to kind of give it that, you know, that old school feel where it was more about the atmosphere and like the actual, well, in this case for Hellraiser, like the villains, the Cenobites, and like we said before, the Cenobites were so well done. So
they were probably the highlight of the movie, honestly.
Yeah. So for sure. So I would have to agree. Like, the best thing this movie has going for it is the actual direction and atmosphere and cinematography. Like, the visual work in this movie, the sets in this movie, like those little moments where it's like the POV on the merry-go-round and you're seeing a Cenobite for the very first time. Like, it's really well done. Like, that scene in particular you were talking about kind of reminded me of the way the direction of Mandy was.
Yes,
you
great.
Know, where you would just see these
totally.
Yeah, you just see these like kind of dark, foggy horizons with mists, you know, and like figures, like not a lot of dialogue. You know, it had a very similar approach to it, and I really like those scenes, and I think that's the main reason I really like this movie.
Indeed. So Serbia. They filmed in Serbia and the United States. So what do you think was Serbia? Do you think it was that mansion that happens towards the end, like the second half of the movie basically takes place at this like crazy mansion? Do you think that was Serbia, or do you think the stuff before was Serbia in the beginning?
Well, to be honest, I'm really surprised you said it was filmed in Serbia. I thought that was just drone footage or something like that, like stock footage they got from Serbia just to make it look like they were in that area. But there's the scene where they literally say they're in Serbia, showing all those apartment buildings with what's her name that worked for Roland, picking up the puzzle box, and then the mansion itself. So
yeah,
that really surprises me. They actually went to go film in Serbia just for that.
Yeah, well, they filmed the masterpiece My Son Hunter in Serbia too. So I think Serbia is like, I think Serbia is.
Sorry, guys, the review's still coming.
I think Serbia is like a hotbed right now for filming movies. For some reason, they must give really good like tax write-offs or rates or something. I don't know how it works, but I'm seeing a lot of films going to Serbia all of a sudden. In fact, I think didn't Moon Knight film in Serbia too? I think Moon Knight did. I don't know. I could be making that up. Anyway, broadcaster, before we get to spoilers, just thumbs down, thumbs up. What do you tell the people that are about to turn this off because they haven't seen the movie yet? What's your final closing argument and suggestion?
I give it 4 thummies.
4 thummies. All right.
4 out of 5 thummies.
All right. That seems like an anagram for something that might be coming later in the podcast. I'll allow it. I think this is
4.5 thummies.
I think this is the best horror movie of 2022. I think
it's a hard title to give since we don't review horror
movies. I'm
movies.
talking personally because I watch way more horror movies than we ever talk about on this podcast.
Oh, okay.
For me, I think I watched maybe 8 horror movies this year, maybe 8 to 10, somewhere in there. This is the best one in my opinion. There are a few other good ones that are close, but I'm going to put this one at the top. And I think that if you are a former Hellraiser fan that fell off the boat, for good reason, in the middle there, it was rough seas. There was quite a storm that we were sailing. Come back, because this Hellraiser movie is sort of the answer to what you've been wanting since Hellraiser 2, in my opinion. That being said, are you ready to get into some spoilers?
Hallelujah.
All right, broadcaster. This movie starts with a party by the hedonistic millionaire you were mentioning earlier named Roland Voigt in the mansion that we later find the movie takes place in, mostly towards the end. But before that, we get this little intro scene where we get this prostitute who finds the puzzle box. And that's what he was, right?
He's a male guy.
He was a gigolo.
I was gonna say, he's like something. He seemed really nervous to be a prostitute, though. I was like, he was in a swinger party. I was like, his first time.
Well, I mean, if you're a male prostitute and you're going to like George Soros's house, you, in the back of your mind, you're probably think
you're going to get stabbed with the puzzle box.
Ritual sacrifice, right? Yeah, which is exactly what fucking happens. So, yeah, Voight's
he was kind of dumb about it, though. Let's be real.
Well, it's interesting because he starts to do it by himself, and then he kind of stops, and then Voight's like, "No, you've solved
almost
that box.
Finished. Go ahead." And he's like, "Is there a prize?" My prize. It's like at that point, I'd put it down and be like, "I'm out of here."
Yeah. So something happens. It happens quite often throughout this movie, and that is a little fucking shiv pops out of the box and stabs the person. Shiv. And
the puzzle box stabbing people now.
I don't like. It's kind of reminded me of like Aqua Teen Hunger Force a little bit. The way this little knife came out of the box and just like stabbed people. It seemed like it would be something you'd see in Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Just a little kind of cartoony and goofy. And then like the blade would just go away like it was never there.
My dad owns a dealership.
Anyway, a portal opens and chains, the CG chains that Broadcaster Nickels was talking about earlier, come out and, they rip him apart as per usual with
that one was the most like on display chain attack too. Mm-hmm. Like they just like had him sitting in the background just slowly getting pulled apart while Roland's just like, "Yo, Leviathan, what's up?"
Roland's like getting some fucking hand lotion in the back room, like, yeah.
Dude.
So what do you think about this opening scene?
That was dope.
Yeah.
I think it was a cool scene. It really set up the pace of the movie, and didn't have like any of those, immediate standout moments where you're just like, I'm going to turn this off in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, it had like an Eyes Wide Shut vibe with the party,
kind
with
of,
the sex party a little bit.
Yeah.
And I also, one thing I really like about it in retrospect, not so much when I first watched it, but in retrospect, it's the only time in the movie you see the mansion before it's abandoned. So like the rest of the movie where you see this mansion, it's just like this decrepit, abandoned estate. But in this scene, it's like alive and active. And there's like hundreds of people there, and it's like in total, working condition. So it's kind of cool to see it like that before you see it as a haunted house later in the movie.
Yeah, for sure. I love how they like the mansion slowly becomes the labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. The hidden hallways behind the walls where fucking our boy Voight was hiding.
It's like fucking. That's like a whole other horror film, dude.
It is, dude. That's the thing about this is most of the shitty Hellraiser movies that have kind of taken place in the middle, like the 5s, the 6s, and the 7s, they've all been one-dimensional, horribly written, and just like nothing there other than like the main point, which is a nothing point to begin with. This movie is more like an onion. There's layers to it, and that was one of the layers I liked the most. The man behind the walls, the monster behind the walls. You accidentally hit the secret trap door and there's a fucking monster hiding in the house. Like, that's a cool thing. And then when you actually see what he is, dude, that fucking mechanical contraption through his chest that randomly pulls his fucking, not his like arteries, his nerves, dude. Yeah. That is so Hellraiser. Like, that is the most Hellraiser thing I've seen in any Hellraiser movie, including the originals.
Yeah, dude, it was fucking brutal.
I gotta give him credit for that. I'm just like, when you first see it, you're like, what the fuck is that? Because you don't really know what it is, but then towards the end, like, he kind of like tells you what it is, and you see it in action, and you're just like, oh my god, dude, that is some shit. Loved that. But taking a step back, after the intro, there's a 6-year time skip, and we meet Riley, the new Kirsty.
Not Christy.
No, she never will be. I thought she was okay though. Not
kind of a fucking dumb bitch.
I thought she was like a
Christy's
dumb
kind of a dumb bitch too, though.
Well, I mean, all horror movie girls are kind of dumb bitches, if we're being honest. That's sort of what they're supposed to be here, at least in the traditional sense. I know that's
I'm
probably
tired of your games, Christy.
And, that might be one of the reasons modern horror sucks so much, because you're not allowed to depict women like that anymore. So maybe, there might be a little secret sauce in that aspect of old horror movies. But I'm just going to take my misogynist opinions and keep them to myself.
Misogyny alert. Misogyny alert.
The more interesting thing, though, is her boyfriend, Trevor, who, by the way, we didn't talk. I really wanted to mention this in the non-spoiler section without spoiling it, but with just kind of shouting it out. There is a legitimate twist in this movie. And it's the boyfriend being the architect. Now, what did you think about this? Because I did not see that coming till the end. Like, there was like right before.
It's 'cause his acting is so shitty. It's why you didn't suspect him.
Maybe, but like through the whole arc of this movie, I did not suspect him being in on it till just a few minutes before it was revealed that he was in on it. Like, there's one scene before you find out where it kind of gives you a hint. Like, he kind of like, he's on his deathbed and she's like trying to do something that was going to like expose him. And he's like, no, don't do that. You know what I'm talking about? You remember that scene?
Yeah.
That was when I was like, oh shit, he's in on this shit. But like before that, I had no fucking idea. And I thought that was pretty cool because most horror movies don't have good twists anymore. It's not something you see very often in modern horror.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
So you thought that he was in on it from the beginning? When did you realize he was in on it?
I never suspected him, to be honest.
Okay.
The whole time I kept on seeing him in the movie. I was just like, God, this guy's acting is like terrible.
Yeah.
I was too fixated on that. I never saw it coming.
Yeah. Well, like the first time we really see them together, he's convincing her to break into this fucking like
Yeah.
self-storage place that has like a safe within a safe, and she finds the puzzle box inside. And that, I feel like that scene, maybe I should have realized he was in on it in retrospect, but I didn't. I didn't at all. So like
it does seem super sus thinking about it. In
yeah, but they got me. So like they definitely got me. I didn't suspect it. But yeah, so she solves the box, but she doesn't get cut by the blade. And fucking the Cenobites make their first appearance, and they demand she chooses another sacrifice.
Yeah. She's like, bitch, that blade was for you.
I love this part of the movie because it sort of establishes the Cenobites as not as monsters. You know what I mean? Like, there's a real lazy, easy way to kind of categorize Cenobites as just, they're just like random demon monsters from hell, whatever. But this sort of like paints them in a much more like intellectual and sinister vibe, in my opinion, the way they go about this. So Riley goes and gets blackout drunk, or wait, no, she takes pills and then drinks and gets blackout drunk. And this is where that scene with the merry-go-round happens. And so basically it's like spinning and spinning around, and like one time it'll spin, there'll be nothing there. Spin again, and you'll see the Hell Priest in the background as a shadow. They'll spin again, and she'll be gone. That type of shit was all throughout this movie, and I loved it. Great cinematography and just great shots. Nothing was really wasted in this movie. There were no points where I thought, oh, this is filler. Were there any parts where you were like, oh, this is filler? Because I never thought that watching this movie.
No. I mean, it's 2 hours long. So
a 2 hour long horror movie you would think would have some filler. That's kind of my point.
Yeah. It's very true.
Yeah. But anyway, her brother, right? Yeah, her brother shows up to try, because, you know, he's like she's back off the wagon. I gotta go rescue her. And he finds her, and she's passed out too much, and she just won't wake up. But then he picks up the box and it cuts him. And then he goes into the bathroom, and this is where that other scene I called out earlier happens. This, I think, is my favorite scene in the entire movie. The bathroom Cenobite reclamation scene is what I like to think of it as. What did you think about this scene? I loved the way they shot it, the cinematography, and sort of, you know, we were both talking about how we don't like gore porn. Wasn't this like the perfect scene for people that are into this shit but aren't into gore porn? Because it wasn't really that gory, but it was super sinister and dark.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely one of the more gory scenes, I'd say, but
it could have been way gorier. Like,
yeah.
You think it was? I don't know. I wouldn't think it's the goriest scene by far.
No,
I feel like there's a lot of more gory scenes in that movie.
I think the only other gory scene, because it wasn't a lot, but like I think when that chick gets her back ripped off.
Yeah. There's a few, man. There's a few I think that are a little bit more hardcore, but yeah. But yeah, either way, I think that was my favorite kill scene, I guess, of the movie. I really like mirror play. I like mirrors within mirrors, and like that whole sort of like Pandora's box element to mirrors. And I like the symbolism of it. Yeah. So yeah, what did you think about that whole that I call that sequence A? You know, it's like basically the beginning of the movie post the intro. What did you think about that whole kind of sequence?
I mean, it's not like exactly when you mean sequence, you mean like
just from the intro ending all the way to the end of the bathroom scene, basically, with all like the, meeting the characters, with all the sort of building up, then the boyfriend going on the mission with her, and then her, getting pissed off, going out and getting fucked up, and like all that. Like, what did you think about that chunk of the movie?
First, I mean, I wasn't really too like it kind of made me hate like the main character. She just didn't seem very likable, And I was like, well, this bitch is just like a drug addict, and she's slowly realizing this thing shivs people. She just like, doesn't give a fuck. She could be a little bit more vocal about it, but I mean, it was good. It's, I don't know if I'd say it's anything standing out as like groundbreaking to me. I don't watch a lot of horror movies, so
yeah.
But,
I'm kind of with you. Everything that happens pre merry-go-round, I was like, like whatever on. But like the merry-go-round, then the bathroom sort of like saved that part of the movie for me. Like I loved those two parts. Those parts kind of back to back are what made me realize this was going to be a good movie.
Yeah. Like, yeah, definitely when she starts passing out on the merry-go-round is when, like when the worlds start colliding, you start getting to see like the wall shift and the labyrinth slowly forming around. Like that stuff was super cool to me. But as far as like the substance of, like, like I said in the beginning, the substance of the characters were, just enough, they didn't really intrigue me enough by themselves. But as plot devices, they were bearable, because, there's a couple things in this movie that I'm sure are just ESG score fucking point things, for a fucking horror movie. I don't know why they'd be trying, but there's definitely equity afoot, like the only survivors being the gay black boyfriend and Riley, all the Cenobites mysteriously being females now. Like, there's definitely some things that typically I would look at in a movie and be like, oh God,
well,
like it's happening here too.
Yeah. But there's definitely
like
no good guys that are white men in this movie, which is a trend in Hollywood. Not a lot of good guy white men in the. It
couldn't even be the villain either, though. It took our boy hell of a fucking pinhead.
But yeah, I kind of agree with you. I cringed a little bit when they first go to the apartment and they see the brother's boyfriend, like they're gay or whatever, and it was just like, okay,
cool. Always has to be a gay boyfriend scene.
It's just like, it's weird because I grew up like not really caring about gay people or any sort of like identity politics. So like, it's not that I care about the gay guys being in the movie. It's just like that it's so artificial and it's just like agenda based and it's thrown in your face on purpose. Like, is just like this weird, it's just this weird creeping thing that kind of ruins cinema and ruins video games or whatever else you want to throw in there.
It's okay, children. They paid for their sins in the end.
Many have. Anyway, after the bathroom scene, there's a scene with the lawyer. Remember that scene? She finds out the owner of the warehouse that she robbed and finds the lawyer, and the lawyer tries to like take the box out of her hands, and then it cuts him, and he takes a fat L from the Cenobites as well. And that's what leads to the mansion. And from this point on, the entire movie basically takes place at the mansion. So,
yeah.
For better or for worse, the rest of the movie is in a very interesting mansion. What did you think about this mansion? Because I haven't seen a more interesting domicile in a movie since like maybe The House on Haunted Hill or...
It did have that vibe, didn't it?
Yeah, like just like the cage thing that wraps around it, and the way the architecture of it, it was just like super like, whoa, and different. Like it wasn't like the standard shit you're used to. So I'll put that in the win column for this movie. I also like how everything in this movie is explained. So like at first you see that cage around the house and you're just like, what in the fuck is that? What possible use is that? And then the movie explains what use for that is pretty quick. It's to keep the Cenobites out when shit goes wrong with the demonic sacrifice rituals. I enjoyed that part of it. Everything is explained in this movie. There's really no plot holes. But the Cenobites do open holes in the ground that lead straight into hell, which I liked. What'd you think about that? Like the car chase scene where
yeah, dude, that was fucking dope.
Oh man, it really was.
The biter just like coming out of the ground and like the labyrinth beneath him, just like upside down stairs and shit.
Yeah, and this is the labyrinth. This is the Leviathan from Hellraiser 2, straight up. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no interpretation. If you watch Hellraiser 2 and then you watch this movie, you cannot say anything to the contrary. So this is, in my opinion, a direct sequel to Hellraiser 2. I don't think it's a reboot. I think it is a sequel to Hellraiser 2. And the confusing part about that is the female Cenobite, which is fine. Maybe they could explain that in a future movie, what happened to our, Doug Bradley, our boy. Maybe there's a reason for it. I don't know. But either way, like if you really look at it, everything that happens from this point on. If you look at everything that happens from here on, it just drips of Hellraiser 2. And that is what made me truly fall in love with this movie, because Hellraiser 2 is not only my favorite Hellraiser, it's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It's up there with like the greats of the greats, in my opinion. I don't think much touches it. And to get a sequel, in my opinion, a movie that is a sequel to that, 30 years later is crazy to me. Like it's so weird that I watched Hellraiser 2 when I was like 10 and now I'm almost 40 and I'm getting a sequel to it. It's a bizarre feeling, but it's also really cool. It's just so unexpected. I would have never ever expected to get another Hellraiser movie. Like that,
one of those things where I thought it was just dying. Like I didn't think it was really going to get a reboot or a bigger budget ever. I thought it was just doomed to slowly whittle away.
Nope. So thank you, Mickey Mouse. Appreciate it. This makes up a little bit for Last Jedi, but not fully. But it takes a couple digits off the ledger. So we find out once we are in the mansion. Riley does a little investigating and finds the journals. And this is another part of this movie I love, and it's very subliminal. And if you're not into the past of Hellraiser, you'd probably just gloss over this part and not give a fuck. But she finds a journal that shows all of the configurations of the puzzle box with this crazy lore attached to it that you just like, wait a second. Clive, my boy. Like this is, you talk about shit dripping Clive Barker. Holy shit was this one. So we got the Laudrent configuration and we have the Liminal configuration and we have the Lazarus configuration and then we have the Leviathan configuration. And then finally we have the Lament configuration. So each one of these is a choice. And it's like we're taking like the genie, like the sort of like Aladdin genie sort of storyline, turning it upside down and sending it straight to hell is sort of how I look at this. So like each one of these options are what you get to choose when you meet with Leviathan. And all of these options have like this sort of like, knowledge. It's going to make me the smartest man in the world, which would be lore. But instead you get like this, not Twilight Zone. What is the show I'm thinking of? Tales from the Crypt. You get like sort of this Tales from the Crypt sort of alteration to your wish that fucking damns you to hell in a way that you didn't expect. And I love that. I love the attention to detail we got with the puzzle box in this movie. Because let's be honest, Doug Bradley, Pinhead, I love him. He's great. But the real star of Hellraiser has been and always will be the fucking puzzle box. And we got a true movie dedication to the puzzle box itself in this movie. I love that.
Yeah, they definitely fleshed it out more. It was really cool to see them actually, like you said, those options. Like like in the beginning of the movies, it was just like literally this plot device that brought the Cenobites. Like there was no like actual like seemed like biblical lore. I mean, Hellraiser 2 kind of brought that in with the Leviathan and stuff like that, but it didn't react like that. Like, that was super cool. Is that stuff part of like the book you were talking about? Yes.
That's the thing. Like when you see this, you're just like, oh my God, there's no chance Clive Barker isn't involved in this movie. Like there's no way some random dudes are going to put this shit in. There's just no way. So he made an impact as an executive producer. I don't think a lot of executive producers of anything make a huge impact. It's usually sort of just like a ceremonial title. In this case, I think that Clive Barker has taken the power of the executive producer to the lament configuration, if you will.
Lament configuration.
But yeah, anyway, So yeah, then we get into the sort of like monster in the walls part of the movie. Trevor is dying, and
he got bit by the biter.
Yeah, and we find the guy in the walls on accident when the chick is just pressing light switches and shit.
She gets fucking stabbed by the Star of David, dude.
Just one more thing I want to touch back on that I kind of forgot about with the car chase scene. I really liked the fact that the scene ends. I mean, like the whole car chase scene was amazing, right? Like, do you agree? Like from beginning to end, it was just an amazing part of the movie.
Yeah,
like,
it was awesome.
Like you have like the ground collapsing into hell behind the car, and you have the chick that got hit, sliced in the back seat dying, and like from her vision, she starts to see the van tear itself apart and become Leviathan, become the
dude, that was super cool.
Dude, that was sick. And then at the end, we have the main character, Riley, try and take the box and throw it off like the bridge or whatever. And then the fucking, the female Cenobite shows up, or the Hell Priest. They're all female Cenobites now. I forget this. And she's like, no, we want more from you, Riley. Like that scene. I loved that. And I loved the fact that she sort of like bought it a little bit. Did you feel like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. No doubt. She's like, that was a moment of realization where the choices have to be made.
Yeah. And by the way, the chick that died in the back of the car, Nora, I think that she probably has the most gory death scene in the movie.
Yeah, no doubt.
That was a pretty gnarly one. But anyway, yeah, I loved the way that the Hell Priest shows up and she says, oh, no, we have plans for you. Don't you want to bring your brother back to life?
Yeah.
And she tells, only two more you gotta kill. And she buys it and she goes, and I'm just like, oh, that is so good. It's so sinister. Again, just great writing, great story in this movie. It's just good. And you get to this point and her boyfriend, as you noted, took a hit from the biter, and they're behind this fence, and they're like basically facing death, and you see her next to the boyfriend, and she's sitting there looking at him, and you're like, oh, she's about to mark him. She's about to kill her boyfriend, and you're just like, oh, fuck, this is getting good. But instead, she uses it against the biter. And like, I'm just sitting there like, wait a second, what? And it works. And you see the Hell Priest sort of looking in the background like, that bitch, she figured out a loophole. Again, just great writing. I feel like this movie, other than the sort of that lull in the beginning after the intro, just has great writing all the way through.
Yeah, I mean, personally, that scene like kind of came off gimmicky to me. I was just like, well, the fucking Cenobites are the servants of Leviathan. I don't get it. Why would it fucking allow a Cenobite to get marked?
Well, it's sort of like, I mean, okay, I kind of see where you're coming from with that, but it's almost like the devils do, you know what I mean? Like, true devils, true dark side demon type characters, they're evil, but they still play by rules, and they kind of depend on their marks not knowing the rules. So
yeah,
if you think about it, you would never in a million years think after the Hell Priest told you had to sacrifice 2 more humans, although she didn't say humans. But you kind of get that implication. You would never think I can mark one of her own demon pets instead. And the fact that she did that and it worked, I just thought was like super original and surprising, and I didn't see it coming a mile away. Did you? Would you have ever guessed that was going to happen?
No. It makes me think that bitch's days are numbered for the next one that they're going to do. She might get fucking marked.
Mm-hmm.
If she comes back for a second movie.
Yeah.
And then the real Pinhead comes.
Yeah. Yep. And, yeah, so we find our boy with the vein machine in his chest and the walls. And he stabs Colin with the box. And
Colin panics. Starts running. Trevor in tow. Is that right, man? You're gonna die.
Yeah. And
for a plot twist. Trevor dies. He gets lamented right up the chest.
Yeah. So this is where we sort of find out about like the cage around the house and how it works, because the Cenobites are following him from the car ride, and they bring the doors down and they realize that no one can get in. But unfortunately, they're trapped with Voight. And we get this little sort of diatribe by Voight where he's like, I was looking for the final pleasures of this universe, and I called them for it, and they gave me this vein machine. I don't know why, but I just loved the way he like retold the story. Like, you'd think with someone who had like a nerve, like an accordion in their body playing their nerves, like they wouldn't be so like, I'm gonna explain my backstory. But he does.
It's one of those scenes that seemed a little weird.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the same thing, like what's her name being a sacrifice, the secretary for Roland or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you see her like one time pick up the puzzle box and then another time in the bar.
Yeah.
And the next time you see her, she's fucking dying of cancer and like just being erratic about taking the puzzle box. You're like, that didn't seem very necessary.
Yeah, but so basically, what ends up happening here is that Riley's boyfriend betrays the team, and is revealed that he is on Team Voight, and Voight steals the puzzle box and stabs Riley's brother's boyfriend with the puzzle box as the final sacrifice. And this is where shit gets lit. This is like the part of the movie where I was like, yes. It pans up to the clouds and you see the clouds turn dark. And Leviathan comes down on top of this fucking mansion.
This is dope. This is where the fucking mansion turns into the labyrinth.
Yes. Oh man, it's so fucking cool. So because our boy Voight is in control of the box when the final sacrifice is made, he gets to make a second wish from the genie. And his wish is to undo his first wish. And I love the little conversation that the Hell Priest has with Voight over this. And she's just sort of like befuddled by it. Like, you would dare not accept our gift? Like she's just sort of, we thought that you sought pleasure. I guess we were wrong.
There are no takebacks, only exchanges.
Yeah, great line. That was a fucking great line. Yeah, and Riley steals back the box, unlocks the doors. The Cenobites come in. This is where it's like full pandemonium. And what Riley saves. She like, how does this work? She like, so the final sacrifice was the brother's boyfriend, and this is where the well scene happened that you called out earlier, right?
No, he survived.
Right. Remember, he was supposed to be the final sacrifice. Remember, he gets stabbed by Voight, and he's running downstairs into the basement, and that whole
gets sacrificed instead.
Right. So this is where that scene where you're calling out the well or the bad CG.
Yeah. This is when Roland is getting taken.
So he's getting chained up. He's about to die. And Riley comes down and she's like, no, don't do it. And they're like, the sacrifice has already been made. And she's like, no, take my fucking piece of shit boyfriend instead. which is kind of like, on one hand, I can kind of see if someone were to call it contrived a little bit, because it's just like, of course, he's conveniently there as the only bad guy left that she could do that to. But at the same time, it's kind of just like, I just like the power that she was given by the female Hell Priest. Like, I feel like our Pinhead wasn't as lenient. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if this happened with Doug Bradley would be like, I'm taking you all to hell now.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, the lot of you.
So the boyfriend, gets dragged to hell along with the best of them, and then what? Then they tell Voight, it can't be revoked, but we can trade it, and
we'll give you an audience with the butthole, the universal butthole in the sky.
Yes, and she offers him the power configuration, the power choice, whatever you want to call it, and he accepts. And the second he accepted, I'm like, oh shit, because I just knew something insane was going to happen based on this choice. And
comes the Cenobite.
Yeah, well, does he though? I have a different kind of view on that, but we'll talk about it in a second. We're almost at the end. Voight, he's released and healed, and then the Leviathan sends like a scorpion chain down from the Leviathan and grabs him and picks him up like it's an alien. Like, you know how you see UFOs beam people up with their fucking little light circles? Yeah. It was like the Leviathan did that with Scorpion's fucking chains. It was fucking sick. Then, so Cenobites, they tell Riley that they can resurrect Matt, but then Riley's like, I know, you'll send Matt back as like a fucking cannibalistic, necrophiliac, incestual zombie that's gonna rape me and eat me, so no, you can keep him in hell. And then this is another interesting part. I don't remember, was it the Hell Priest or was it a Cenobite? I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was the Hell Priest. This is where the lament configuration comes in. Because if you remember, the lament configuration wasn't in the lore. It wasn't in the journal, right? That was the only configuration left out. And the Hell Priest says, "You've chosen the lament configuration. You're choosing to live the life of a shitty, normal, normie. Good game. We're out. We're not interested in you anymore." I loved like the sort of attitude they gave her over it. Like they're not gonna kill her. They're just like pitying her for being such a pussy.
You're a bitch.
Another just great scene in my opinion. This
screams Clive Barker.
Yes. And then, so basically that's the end of the movie. Essentially, they leave the mansion and they have their little like talking chat as they leave, and then it pans out. You think the movie's over, but then we get our little bonus scene where we go inside the Leviathan and we see Voight. Now, you said he's being turned into a Cenobite. Maybe. I think there's a good chance that's true. But I think he was being turned into a new Hell Priest.
I mean, yeah.
I think, okay, so this is totally conjecture, but I believe, based on my knowledge of Hellraiser, that when the Hell Priest fails, the way that this Hell Priest failed to get Riley, I think that they are thrown in the trash can and they're replaced. And I think Voight is the new Hell Priest that is going to replace the one we had in this movie. Could be either way. I could be totally off base with this. But that is how I felt when I was watching the scene. And that is the end, Broadcaster Nickels.
Is it though? The carnal pleasures never end.
So yeah, man, like I like this movie a lot. There's very little about it I didn't like. There's just a few little nagging small things, especially towards the beginning. But man, once this movie got going, it just like, it was just scene after scene of just some really badass shit and stuff that, and part of it is because I've watched all the Hellraiser movies and I'm very familiar with how bad they've gotten recently. So like watching this movie was shocking because of how bad some of the previous movies have been. Maybe you don't have that same feeling and that's going to give you a different perspective on the movie than me.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't choose. I choose not to watch bad films, so.
Well, you don't know they're bad till you watch them, man. Come on.
Yeah, I know about 10, 15 minutes in, I can tell.
I gave that social media Hellraiser way too much time in my life. You're right about that.
Social media Hellraiser. I forgot that's what it was about.
I knew that one was going to be bad.
The Puzzle Box app. I forgot.
Oh, my God. Oh, man.
How could I forget?
So, I mean, I guess, what do you think about that whole ending sequence?
I thought it was, I think it's him becoming a Cenobite for sure. I thought it was pretty dope too, because it kind of reminded me of like Destiny with the fucking the Traveler Orb. You know, you like finally got accepted into the orb. It's like,
the R-rated version.
He got turned into an angel.
Yeah. Power.
It's like fucking Evangelion, dude. You don't realize what angels are.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I don't know, man. Like the fact that that it's called, yeah, I don't know. You're right. Like, there's so much that goes into it because, like, they call it the power configuration, and it's like, are Cenobites really powerful, or is the Hell Priest powerful? What is power anyway? Like, what do we even know of what power is? We have like this idea in our human forms what we think power means, but what is power on a celestial scale? It's interesting. I don't know, but you could be right about that.
Law. Well, his eyes turned blue and shit, like he became like.
That's
like
the thing.
Ascended, you know,
that's
like,
what I'm. That's another reason why I think that the Cenobites don't have glowing blue eyes.
They don't. I didn't go back.
Not that I've ever seen. I've never seen. So I've never ever seen a Cenobite with glowing blue eyes. And I've never really seen a Hell Priest with glowing blue eyes except for some comic books. Now that's where things get a little squirrely, and that's why I'm not like super sold on my theory here, is because what's really making me think this is true is based on comic book material, which I'm not even sure if Clive Barker had anything to do with. But I have seen pictures, and the funny thing is, one of them was a female Hell Priest with glowing blue eyes in a comic book. So, like, as soon as I saw it, and then it's like this movie has a female Hell Priest in it on top of it. So it just, these compounding factors, I'm just like, oh, fuck, they turned him into a Hell Priest.
Interesting.
But yeah, what I meant about the ending is just like generally the ending, not that one scene at the end. Like, what did you think about the whole way it went down with Riley and her choice and the way it played out with the deaths and with her saving the gay boyfriend of her brother and all that, and then choosing not to resurrect him, all that stuff.
That was very high ESG score of them. But other than that, like, it was cool. It was, wasn't very typical like horror film ending, where like it's just like a lone survivor and they like, are just walking away from a disaster.
Yeah.
Like there was some cool like exploration of like why this shit happens, every movie, like why the Cenobites are actually what they are. Like, it seemed like there was a slow build up to something bigger, maybe next movie, instead of it just being this one off like Hellraiser 2 was,
Yeah.
So hopefully that's where it's going. That's what it felt like.
Yeah. Yep. Well, all I have to say is thank you, Mickey Mouse, for allowing Clive Barker a seat at the table, because Clive Barker gave us a Disney princess we can all get behind. And I never in 1,000 years ever thought I was going to get a new Hellraiser movie like this. I thought from now on there's either going to be no Hellraiser or there's going to be fucking social media Hellraiser. Like, that's what I thought the future of Hellraiser was. I didn't think there was going to be any return to form. And this, to me, at the very least, was a true return to form.
No doubt. I'll say that. 3 Hellraiser movies in my life.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah, I don't know if have you watched any of the old Hellraiser movies recently?
No.
You should rewatch the original trilogy, man. You'll be surprised. They'll be better than you remember them. But
what do you mean by that?
I mean, like, most of my viewings of the original Hellraiser trilogy took place from when I was like ages 7 to 15. I never watched them much as an adult, and I watched the original trilogy in Blu-ray. So like I never even saw the original movies in HD. I watched them all on VHS 100 times. And I went back and I downloaded I purchased the Blu-rays of the original Hellraiser trilogy, and I was stunned at how much more I got out of them as an adult. Like they were better than I remembered them. I think it's just if you're dark on horror right now, and there's a good reason to be. Horror is not in a good space. There's a lot of gore porn. There's a lot of trash. taking a step back and going to check out that original trilogy might reignite your love for horror again.
Listen, dude, I gotta play Callisto Protocol. All right, dude. I got no time for that.
All right, broadcaster. As you know, here in the Crack Cellar, we have a official patented Ghostbusters rating system. And on that system, how would you rate the 2022 reboot of Hellraiser?
Giving it an equity gozer.
What? An equity? Damn.
A strong equity, dude. Are you kidding me?
An equity gozer.
We had a female lead, equity. We had a gay boyfriend scene. Punish the white guy. Notice that one. Kept the black one. Notice that. What else? What else would I point out? All female Cenobites.
Hey, that biter had a cock. I know he did.
Who knows, dude? We'll never know. And guess what? He was the only Cenobite to get sacrificed.
Oh shit! Damn it!
Just saying, dude. The white boyfriend ends up being a bad guy.
Mm.
I mean, it's compounding.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not going to give it the highest score because, again, I don't watch a lot of these films and I don't really know how to really compare it properly. But I will say it's a really good movie. I enjoyed it, especially for a horror film. Usually I'll just not watch. I'll usually just avoid these. But the trailer itself got me interested just because of how good it looked.
Yeah. All right.
You know.
Hey, that's cool. That's it's your opinion and you're entitled to it, Broadcaster Nickels. I think this is a post-op boogeyman. You know, he doesn't have the cock anymore. But
it's convincing.
He can still open the closet door. Okay? That's all I'm saying. And with that, we'll close out.